Hello and welcome here to TalkFCB and welcome back to Full Reaction here on the channel today, because we are going to be discussing Inter versus Barça and how, in my opinion, Barça were robbed last night at the San Siro, because they were. We're going to be talking about the truly astounding decisions that were made by the officials, and not just that, but the aftermath. What we've heard now after the game, which, if anything, compounds the fury and indeed the frustration following this defeat. But what we're also going to be discussing is our own performance too. Because as much as those decisions anger me, what also does was how we performed last night. We have to take a long, hard look in the mirror. There's going to be emphasis on Xavi. There's going to be emphasis on our problems in the final third. And we're also going to be discussing how we overcome them. It is coming up for you right here today. So let's do it. Because if we start, first of all today, guys, with big mistake number 1 from Barça. And the big mistake was allowing Inter to score first. Now that sounds simple, but what we did throughout that first half, we let them grow into the game. This was a team 9th in Serie A. This was a team devoid of confidence. The fans were ready to get on their back. And what did we do? We handed them confidence. We gave them opportunities. We gave them moments there to actually feel like, okay, we could do this. And once they scored, that gave them an enormous lift. It released all of that nervous energy, not just from the players, but also from the fans inside the stadium. And Inter had something to protect, and that was a nightmare, because they'd already set up there in a back 5. It was going to be tough. It was going to be difficult to break down, and to concede the first goal, we set ourselves up for failure. However, just because you go a goal down, just because you go behind in a game, doesn't mean that you can't come back, and Barça should have had the tools to hurt Inter. We should have had a game plan here to break them down, and I want to start by talking about midfield. And I'm not talking here about Pedri, because he was absolutely wonderful. He always is in this Barcelona team, and last night was no different at all. But the rest of our midfield, I've got questions about in this game, because Busquets, to me, questionable, even on the goal there, closing down. Çalhanoğlu certainly could have done better there. And indeed, at the base of that midfield, it was very much pedestrian, I feel, from him. You know, there wasn't too many quick passes. There wasn't too many incisive passes there into the final third from him. And then there's Xavi, and it just didn't seem to me like a game that suited him. Inter was so deep, they sat off us. They weren't really pressuring us on the ball. And also then, we didn't have to recover it quickly. Xavi wasn't really able to chase down opponents, to close them down, to bring that intensity. He didn't really unlock Inter. He didn't cause them any kind of problem. And that is why then, because not a lot was happening in that centre, in the midfield, we were forced to go wide. And that was mistake number 2. Because as a result of always going wide, we sent ball after ball after ball to Ousmane Dembele. Now, Dembele last night had a poor game. By his standards, he was not at the races. 24 crosses he attempted, 19 of those found Inter players. He lost possession 38 times in the game, and it just becomes too predictable. And we saw this, guys, remember, at the end of last season, when every single time we get the ball out to Dembele, and then cross, and then do it again. And it's so obvious what we're going to do every single time, and we look desperate. We have no shape. We have no rhythm about our attack. And what are you expecting Lewandowski to do? He was up last night against Inter's back 3. It was him versus 3 centre-backs. It doesn't matter who you are not making your way through that defence. And that's because we allowed Inter to gang up on Lewandowski. There was nobody else in and around the penalty area causing any kind of threat, posing any different problem to Inter, so they had all the freedom to say, well, we got our defence here, we got our back 3, all we have to do is keep an eye on these crosses coming in and Robert Lewandowski. And that's what I couldn't believe. In all honesty with you guys, I could not believe it took Xavi 83 minutes to introduce Franck Kessié. I was really surprised there that we didn't see him sooner in this game, because as soon as he came on, and indeed they're deep into added time, you saw a difference. You saw there a different dimension in our midfield, and I'm sure that if Frankie de Jong was fit, we would have seen seen him have a real impact as well in that midfield, because we were seeing different runs. We were seeing their Kessié in and around the penalty area, closer to Robert Lewandowski. He had a brilliant turn on the edge of the box there, where he drew a foul from Inter, and then a dangerous free kick followed. We had a different kind of threat, and it worked, and we should have definitely seen that sooner in the game. And I think there's plenty here. Plenty that Xavi has to go away from this one and think, okay, it's back to the drawing board for me. I think we have to hold our hands up and say it didn't work out. The game plan last night, we spoke in the match review about Alonso at left back, the kind of setup that we had on that left side with Rafinha. His position for me was absolutely ridiculous. It made no sense at all. I think Xavi last night, he did get it wrong. We have to be open and honest about that. And what I want to see now is just learning from that, understanding what we did wrong, what went wrong in this game, and making sure now that in the games to come, big crucial games that we have that we're going to discuss, we get it right, because there is no room now, no room at all to make these kind of errors, to make these kind of gambles again, and to ultimately fail. However, there is absolutely no denying, guys, that despite the performance that Barcelona put in, despite the fact that by our own standards, our own high standards, we were not good enough, we still were robbed last night. And let's get into that. Let's talk about those decisions. Because first of all, let me just bring you this one. This one has actually gone under the radar because of all the others. But 20 minutes to go, key time in the game, Çalhanoğlu studs up high on Sergio Busquets. That clear red card. That is an obvious red card offence right there. Because even in real time, you felt that tackle. He really connected there, high up onto Sergio Busquets' leg. That is a red card every day of the week. Referee, he saw it happen, but only gave Çalhanoğlu a yellow. And then came the handballs. Now, Xavi, after the game, they asked him, how he felt, and in his press conference, you got to say he looked absolutely deflated. He said, honestly, I feel outraged right now, because we no longer understand anything. He said, first of all, they tell us that if there's an accidental handball from a player, but he does not go on to score the goal himself, then that goal is legal. And he said, then there's the other one. We're going to be talking about the other one in just a minute. But on that Ansu one there, which is Pedri's goal that was then disallowed, it is clearly an accidental handball. He doesn't move his hand towards the ball. The ball doesn't even change direction after it hits his hand. He doesn't score the goal. Pedri does. So that, by UEFA's own rules, that should be a legal goal. Now, VAR looked at it, they slowed it down, they looked at angles, they have all the rules, they should know them all. That should have been a goal, and there is no excuse whatsoever to disallow that. And then there's this one. This is the other one that Xavi was referencing, and honestly, guys, I think I had nightmares about this decision last night. I think, honestly, since this happened, I can't get it out of my head. I cannot understand, no matter which sort of direction you're looking at this from, no matter what angle you see it from, I'm trying to put myself in the mind there of the VAR team, of the referees, looking at this and thinking, okay, that's not a handball. And you know the incredible thing right now? Something that has indeed emerged in the aftermath of last night's game. Guillem Balaguer there, journalist there, widely renowned in the Spanish footballing world, he says that Barcelona players were told after the game that a penalty wasn't given for Dumfries' handball because VAR thought it was Ansu Fati who handballed it. Now, that is what Guillem has said right now, that on the second instant, this is not to do with Barca's goal that was disallowed, this is the Dumfries handball. Guillem Balaguer says Barca players were told that VAR thought it was Ansu Fati. And the question that I would ask you guys right now is, what is the point in having VAR if you can't get that right? If you can't then take the time out of the game, which we do, we all waiting around for a decision, stopping it, all these interruptions, you look at all the screens and you still can't get it right. We talk about clear and obvious, talk about obvious decisions there that surely VAR have got to clean up, and they get that wrong. And there's no excuse. And you know what makes it worse here? Because we've got VAR, because now you can take a look at it, you can take the time, you can look at the angles, it actually feels worse when this happens. Because if this had been just a refereeing error, a split-second decision, that maybe the referees missed it, maybe the linesman's missed it, you have a human error there, but when you've got VAR, this now feels worse. This feels like a calculated mistake. This feels like an absolute scandal. And just to add to that there, just to add icing onto the cake really, it was the same referee in the VAR room as the one that was in charge for Bayern against Barça, when, if you remember in that game, there was a penalty, obvious penalty, Dembele clearly taken out inside of the area. It's clear as day. And that wasn't given either. The same referee then was in the VAR room for this game, and I just don't get that. I don't recall ever seeing in a big game, back-to-back big games, a referee there continuing and officiating on the same team. That is very, very strange in my opinion. Xavi gave more thought. He said, I'm outraged. That's the only word for it right now. He said, you sit here and you feel. He was trying to look for the words. He said, it's an injustice. He said, but this is football, and we have 3 finals to play, 2 home games to come. He said, we plan to play with more intensity, more rhythm, because in the first half, we've not been good, and we must be self-critical. And I think that's what I'd say right now, guys. As much as these decisions, they have angered me, and they still do, and they still will. There's no getting away from that. We were robbed. It's simple as that on the night. But we have to find a way of moving on. We have to find a way of putting this right. How do we do that? How do we put this right? I'll tell you now. Beat Inter next week. It is as simple as that, guys. On Wednesday next week, you go out there and score as many goals as you can, so you don't have to rely on the officials. You put in the kind of performance that we can do, in front of what I hope will be a packed stadium, an electric crowd, energetic players out there, and you perform. You put this right on the pitch, and you put the game to bed. That is what we have to do, and only time will tell if we can do it. So please, guys, what I would really like in the comments down below from you today is exactly how you're feeling. Thinking back now and looking back at those decisions, what are you feeling about the way they were made, about the decisions that we indeed saw in last night's game, but also on the performance from Barca? What did you make of the way that we played in the first half and indeed in the second? What do we need to do ahead of the reverse fixture against Inter next week? Massive games to come. We can't stop, and we won't stop until we put this right. I will see you soon with more videos. Thank you for joining me, but until next time, as always, Visca, El Barça.